I'm Jacqueline Comeau. I'm a wildlife biologist with Fish and Wildlife Department.
And what are we doing today?
We are going to check a bear den today. So we have a study going on in southern Vermont looking at the impacts of the Deerfield Wind Project on black bear use of critical habitat. And so we have a number of bears wearing GPS satellite collars, and we're going out today to check on one of those bears to replace her collar.
Cool. So when you're going out to look for these bears, like what is the process that you normally use to find them and then to check up on them?
Sure. So unfortunately, these GPS collars, once the bears enter their dens, they usually aren't able to continue communicating with satellites. So we have to spend a lot of time in the early winter finding where their dens are. These collars have a component that sends out what's called a very high frequency. So that component, we have like an antenna and a receiver so that we can hear that frequency beep. And so we go out to find these collars using that method. About 2 months ago, I found this bear. We kind of scouted the den site, so we know what we're walking into today. She's denning under, I'm pretty sure, a big rock with a tree growing over it. We often find next to their den sites, they will do some marking. Some of it is they'll tear down branches to create bedding in their den, or almost like a nest. But this case is more just straight up marking, where she was obviously rubbing and biting and scratching this spot. We don't fully understand why they do it, but our best understanding is that they're communicating with other bears by doing that. But what exactly they're trying to say, we don't really know. But it's pretty cool. So once we get close to the den site, we have what we call a jab stick, which is a long pole that'll have a syringe and needle on it with a drug that we use to immobilize the bear. And so we'll hopefully be able to go in and give her that drug without her even really knowing that we're there. And then once the drug's taken effect, we'll give it about 10 minutes. We will kind of pull her out of the den, change her collar. We'll kind of check her body condition, and we will check if she has any cubs. And we will, check how many cubs, the gender of the cubs.
Little boy. So Jackie, once they're anesthetized, what do you start doing? Like, what kind of information are you pulling together?
Yeah, so there's like a level of priorities. Priority one is making sure the bear is doing all right.
Yeah.
So we start monitoring vitals first with temperature, and we do what's called capillary refill, so to kind of make sure that there's good blood flow going on. The initial jab was at 10:36, yeah, and then the second one was at 10:50.
Let's see, and what time did you check the temperature? The temperature was 96.6.
Say 11:05 or so.
It feels pretty good. She looks good.
She looks in very good condition.
Beautiful.
Nice fat.
We didn't see her in person last year, but
Feel her backbone at all.
pictures I had of her
so
last
good.
summer, she was in poor shape.
Really?
She looks an excellent.
Last fall was just so terrible for food. I mean, I really think it took them almost, or the fall before, yeah. It took them I feel like a year to recover from that.
Wow.
Once we know that she's stable, we work on the collar. And then once we've got a good collar fit on her, we'll take a weight. We probably will put another ear tag in her, which we'll do before the weight. And then within about 45 minutes, we'll kind of have that whole process done, and we'll tuck them all back in the den before she recovers from the drug. So the hope is that once she does recover from the drug, we're long gone, everything is quiet, and she'll just kind of go back into her hibernation state.
I'm glad we're gone. Yep. How easy this is compared to something. I went to work, I came home. I don't know. I went back out later. I had to lock up the 6 of them.
You either had one extra or didn't.
And then when they select their den, what is it about the den that, or is it pretty variable?
It's pretty variable. This is a great den. So she's underneath this root system of this tree. It's very dry, and it's nice and covered from the wind and precipitation. But sometimes they'll have really nice covered dens like this, but other times they'll just curl up under a small softwood or curl up under a log. And we really don't know, again, what motivates them to choose one den over another. It's kind of a mystery.
Nice. And why is it important to do the den visits at this time of year?
Well, so a big part is that bears' weights fluctuate widely from year to year. And so we're typically putting these collars on animals in June and July when their weights tend to be lower. And then during the fall, they usually gain a lot of weight. So part of it is just to make sure the fit of the collar is still appropriate. And then this collar's actually been on this bear since 2017. So the battery on the collar is about to expire. So we need to put a fresh collar on this bear. But bears, because they enter dens for multiple months every winter, it kind of gives us an opportunity to go in, quietly change these collars in a way that's less disruptive than having to recapture them during the summer months.
Nice. And for this study, what's the purpose of the study?
Yeah, so we're trying to understand how the Deerfield Wind Project impacts their use of critical habitat. And that habitat that we're interested in is what we call bear-scarred beech. So beech trees produce a nut called the beech nut, which is a really important food source for bears in the fall and early spring. And where we see areas where beech trees show evidence that bears have been repeatedly climbing them from year to year, which causes a scarring on their trunks, we consider those areas really important feeding sites for bears. And Deerfield Wind was actually built in one of the largest concentrations of bear-scarred beech that we know of in southern Vermont. So we view that as a really important food source for bears throughout this part of the state. And what we're learning is probably it's also an important food source for bears in northwestern Massachusetts as well. So we're trying to see how bears continue to use the remaining bear-scarred beech concentrations kind of in the shadow of these large wind turbines.
Nice. And is this, you mentioned how the beech nut is important for bears. Is it important for other species out there?
Yeah, we actually use the bear almost as an umbrella species when it comes to these beech stands. So it's really important food for bears, but it's also really important food for a lot of small rodents, and ultimately the predators that feed on those rodents. Certain species of birds also feed on them. Turkeys go into these stands as well. So it really is important for a lot of Vermont's wildlife species.
Do you think this study, the Deerfield Wind study, is going to inform more than just this project, but other projects nationwide?
That's the hope, is that we can better understand if there are impacts to bears and what those impacts look like, so that we can better design future wind projects when we're choosing the location of them throughout Vermont and maybe other parts of the country as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jackie.
Yeah, you're welcome.